Today I'm going to talk about how I fuel my long runs. 15.58 miles, 8 minutes, 4 seconds per mile. Had a fantastic long run out there today with my running buddy. Winds were relatively mild for most of the run, so very happy about that. Today I want to talk about how I fuel a long run like that, something that's over 10 miles. And that's usually my cutoff for when I start thinking about water and gels. For my normal run commute, I'm running anywhere between 6 to 8 miles. Sometimes if I take the long way home, it'll be up towards 9 or 10. But unless I'm going to be running for longer than 10 miles, I usually don't worry too much about water. It also depends if it's going to be winter or summer. In the summertime, that number might come down. Kind of my cutoff for when I need to make sure I get water might come down quite a bit. But also in the summertime, at least in Chicago where I tend to run along the lakefront trail, there's a lot of water fountains that are easily accessible. And so you have to think about it a little bit less. There's plenty of places where you could just stop without too much interruption to your run, grab a quick drink of water and go. In the wintertime, it takes a little bit more deliberate planning in order to be able to manage that. All those water fountains that I mentioned earlier are shut off, and so those aren't available. So I have to tweak things just a little bit. But for today, for example, we were planning on going about 15 miles. And so that was 2 gels that I thought I would bring. And on a long run, depending on how intense it's going to be, that'll also affect like which gels I pick. Today, we were just going to go for, let's do the 15 miles. Let's get the longer distance run in, and we'll worry about pace and stuff like that later on in the season. We're not too worried about that now. And so mainly it was just about staying hydrated and having enough fuel just to keep our bodies going. So it really could have been any kind of gel would have been fine for that. I ended up going with a Science and Sport that had a little bit of caffeine in it, and a Cliff Shots that had a lot of caffeine in it. Kind of 2 ends of the spectrum, one that's isotonic and one that's super goopy and very thick. The other thing that we planned for was that at a mile 11 or so, we would stop somewhere for water, and that for us was at Navy Pier. At Navy Pier, depending on the time of day, in Chicago, there's a welcome center that they just built where there's a very nice bathroom and water fountains. And the best part about it is it's very close to where the running path is, so it's not too much of a detour to stop there. It wasn't open for us at the time we hit it on the way back, so we had to run a little bit further down Navy Pier just to get to the Children's Museum. And there, in that part of Navy Pier, when you go in, very close to the entrance, but still a little bit inside, there is also another very nice bathroom and water fountains that are open, usually very early, because that's how people that work at the pier get there early. So that's usually been available to me to use. If this was a little bit more of an intense run, or if we were somewhere where we weren't going to have access to water fountains at all, I might have put on my running vest. I have a Vapor Car 4, which is nice. Everything's front loaded, where I have water bottles up front where I could just take sips of water as I'm running. But I usually don't like to run with that one in the winter because then having the water on you as you're running, the water gets cold from the wind, and then that in turn makes you cold, and it's like a cycle. And it's just, I don't like to carry water on me in the wintertime if I don't have to. But if it were a harder run that we were going on for Saturday, then I think I might have done a little bit of a vest so I could carry the water and keep the stops to a minimum. So different ways of thinking about how to fuel your long run, but it usually comes down to how much food do you need to eat, and for me that's every 5 miles or so. How much water do you want to drink? And that's at least once in the middle of a long run, more often depending on how hard and how hot it is going to be on that day and what your overall objectives are for the run. If you have any other questions about fuel or water on a long run, feel free to leave them in the comments. I'd love to talk to you guys about down there. But before I go, I want to remind you guys about the charity runner for the week. It's Alison Rose. She's going to be running the Boston Marathon, raising money for Massachussetts Eye and Ear. Now, back in 2013, Alison told me how she had been just accepted into the Boston University School of Fine Art. She was an aspiring filmmaker, and she also at the same time started having problems with vision in her left eye. She thought she was going to lose vision in the eye. She started getting treated at Massachussetts Eye and Ear, and they ultimately diagnosed her as having an autoimmune disorder in her eye. And she's proud to report now that she thinks that her ordeal with this disease has been resolved and her vision has been restored. So she's very thankful. Raising money for them, running the Boston Marathon, is her way of being able to say thanks and give back to others who may be going through similar ordeals. If you'd like to learn more about what Alison's doing in terms of raising money, or learn more about Massachussetts Eye and Ear, I'll leave links to both in the description. Feel free to check them out down there. That's all I have for today, everybody. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.
Yo, what's going on?